A young CIA agent named Al picks up his new mentor, Frank Horrigan. That morning, they have an appointment with a counterfeiting syndicate. When they reach the location, the group invites Al onto a boat while Frank starts the transaction. The syndicate leader has already checked his background and uncovered his undercover role. Frank has infiltrated the group earlier, so the criminals do not suspect him. To test his loyalty, they order him to kill his partner. Frank takes the gun and follows the order, but the weapon is empty.
Yes, Frank!
The syndicate planned from the start to eliminate Al. When Al is in danger, Frank acts fast. He fires shots into the surroundings to create a distraction and uses the moment to pull Al to safety. He proves he will risk everything to protect a fellow agent. This is in the line of fire.
That's not gonna happen.
In the line of fire.
The mission ends well, but Al is shaken. He cannot believe Frank seemed willing to shoot him. Frank explains he knew the gun was empty because of its weight. Even with that knowledge, Al begins to question his choice to become a CIA agent. That night they still have reports to finish. Frank tells Al to go home first and calm down. Meanwhile, the police receive a report from a boarding house owner. Days earlier, one tenant nearly caused a fire by leaving an oven on. When the owner entered with a spare key, he found the room's walls covered with photos of the United States president marked with target-like scribbles. The case moves to the CIA. The tenant, Crawley, appears to plan a threat against the president, though investigators need more proof. Frank inspects the apartment while Crawley watches from a distance. A database check shows Crawley has used a false identity. Frank starts to treat the threat as serious. When the team returns to the apartment, it is empty except for an old photo of Frank during his time as a presidential bodyguard. The photo shows the suspect already knows Frank's identity and home address. That night, Frank receives a mysterious phone call. The caller introduces himself as Booth and calmly warns that the President of the United States will soon be in his sights. Booth seems fascinated by Frank, especially after learning that Frank once guarded 2 presidents. This raises a sharp question: how did Booth uncover the background of a special agent so quickly? While they speak, fire engine sirens echo in the distance. Frank realizes Booth is calling from across the street. The CIA tries to identify Booth but fails. Former tenants give conflicting descriptions of his appearance, as if he changes faces every day. To secure the president, Frank reports the threat to the White House Chief of Staff and old friend, Sam. Frank's arrival stirs tension among those who have clashed with him before. He ignores the unease and asks to return as a presidential bodyguard. Sam hesitates, thinking Frank is too old for field duty. Out of respect for their past, he grants the request. Frank struggles to keep pace when running beside the president's car, but he stays on duty. From a distance, Booth watches, pleased to see Frank pulled deeper into his game. During the day, Booth even sends medical staff who pretend Frank is having a heart attack. That evening, Frank stops at a bookstore to buy a magazine he saw earlier in Booth's apartment. The magazine features car designs and might hold a clue. Soon after, Booth calls again. This time Frank is ready. He has installed a wiretap to trace the location. As they talk, the CIA team works to track the call. Booth taunts Frank by mentioning his failure to protect President John F. Kennedy 30 years earlier. Frank had been the agent running beside the president's car when the assassination happened. Since that day, Frank's reputation has suffered. Colleagues distanced themselves and his marriage collapsed. Although shaken by the reminder, he keeps Booth talking long enough for the team to trace the signal. When the call ends, the capture attempt fails. Booth has hidden his network. Once again, Frank is left powerless while Booth stays free. The CIA promises to use more advanced tools for the next attempt. Booth's threat grows more serious. The CIA advises limiting the president's public events, but the warning is ignored because the election is near and the campaign needs crowds. Frank must stay alert at every rally. Meanwhile, Booth travels to Los Angeles. He opens a bank account under a fake company name, an important part of his plan. A bank employee named Pam grows suspicious and asks about his background. Booth invites Pam to dinner to ease her worries, and his calm manner lowers her guard. Later he visits her home, but when he finds Pam with a friend and realizes his identity is exposed, he kills them both. Meanwhile, Frank begins to show interest in Lily, the president's secretary. Although he is older and a widower, he approaches her with quiet persistence. At first Lily refuses, saying she already has a partner, but over time she starts to trust him and their relationship grows. The next day Booth calls again. Frank's colleagues listen as some analyze Booth's state of mind while others try to trace the location. The call is meant to shake Frank by forcing him to relive old memories. This time the team almost succeeds. They detect the call coming from a public phone across from the White House. Agents rush to the spot but fail to find Booth, who is disguised as a homeless man. Frank senses something off about one of the homeless men. He gives chase and Booth nearly gets hit by a passing car. Booth escapes, but the team collects fingerprints from the area where he stumbled. Frank sends the prints to the FBI for a database check. The response is surprising. The FBI reports no match, hiding the fact that the identity is classified. Meanwhile, Booth trains with a custom weapon. He assembles it blindfolded to test speed and precision. He also attends campaign events in several cities to study patterns and spot weaknesses. The bank account Booth opened in Los Angeles funds part of the president's campaign. Posing as a wealthy businessman gives him access to political circles. As election day nears, the president's schedule fills with rallies across many cities. Frank, already tired and aging, struggles to keep up during the rainy season. He takes medication to stay on his feet. Lily urges him to rest, but he refuses, worried Booth might strike at any moment. One afternoon, heavy rain forces a campaign rally indoors. Frank and his team guard the crowded stage while reporters pack the room. Running a high fever, Frank fights to stay alert. A sudden small explosion makes him react at once, thinking it is an attack. It is only a balloon popping. The person behind it is Booth, present the entire time. The commotion causes panic and disrupts the rally. The White House blames Frank for the incident and removes him from the security detail. Lily is concerned, knowing he was only doing his job and that the real threat is still ignored. Although stripped of duty, Frank convinces Sam to keep the case under his supervision. Later that night, Frank plays the piano at his favorite bar, trying to unwind. From the shadows, Booth watches him again. That night, Frank and Booth speak again by phone. Booth admits he was the one who popped the balloon at the rally. Frank presses for a reason why the president is his target, but Booth gives no clear answer. Close to midnight, someone knocks on Frank's apartment door. He first suspects a trap, but the visitor is his partner Al with urgent news. They review the car design magazine found earlier in the suspect's apartment and track down an expert who once spoke with Booth. The expert recalls a heated debate about the government, but cannot remember the man's real name. He only knows the man mentioned the city of Phoenix. There they find a contact, Walter Wickland, who met Booth and provides a key lead. The trail reveals Booth's true identity as Mitch Leary. Frank and Al locate an address linked to him and move in. The house is empty, but they enter through a window to search for evidence. An armed man surprises them, yet Frank manages to disarm him. Moments later, another man enters and identifies himself as a CIA agent. The agent explains that Leary is not just a fugitive, but a former CIA special operative trained for high-risk assassinations. His fingerprints are classified because his career ended after he broke rules and killed his own partner. Meanwhile, Leary tests his homemade weapon. The unusual mix of wood and plastic draws the attention of two hunters passing by. When they ask about it, Leary calmly says the weapon is meant for his plan against the president. At first they think he is joking, until he proves its deadly purpose and ensures they never return. Later that night, Al tells Frank he plans to resign from the CIA. He admits the recent events haunt him and he fears leaving his young child without a father. Frank understands but urges him to stay at least until they capture Leary, knowing the hunt will be far harder without him. The next morning, Frank receives another call from Leary. Everyone in the office listens. This time they know Leary's real identity. Frank challenges him and brings up his past. Leary responds with a claim that shocks the team. He says he never meant to kill his partner. Instead, he insists the CIA ordered his partner to eliminate him once the government no longer needed his services.
Couldn't possibly know as they sent my best friend to my home to kill me.
He feels betrayed and blames the president for ending his career. Leary tells Frank they share the same fate, once loyal to their country and then discarded. He calls Frank a friend and says that is why he has spared him so far, but he warns that if Frank keeps trying to stop him, he will also become a target. The long call gives the CIA enough time to trace Leary's location. Frank and his partner head to the site. On the way they spot Leary trying to escape. A rooftop chase begins. Frank, though aging, keeps up. Al falls behind when he misses a ladder. Frank jumps to the next building and nearly falls. Leary briefly helps him avoid the drop, but Frank tries to seize the moment to capture him. Al catches up and waits for a clear shot, but holds his fire to protect Frank. Leary then swings Frank toward the ladder to keep him from falling.
Leary, don't fucking move!
In the same instant, Al steps forward. Leary reacts faster and incapacitates him. Al dies on the spot while Frank watches in shock. Later, police search Leary's hideout. They find only a scrap of paper with a code the CIA cannot break. Still grieving, Frank gets another call from Leary. Leary tries to break his resolve, saying Frank will never stop him unless he is ready to sacrifice himself, the same way Leary plans to sacrifice himself to kill the president. With the code unsolved, Frank and Sam go to the White House and urge canceling the president's campaign stop in California. Frank believes that is where the assassination will take place. The warning is ignored because the president sees the state as critical for winning votes. Frank persuades Lily to let him join the trip despite the refusal. As security teams sweep the venue, Leary changes his disguise again. 2 days before the event, Frank checks the hotel where the president will dine with party volunteers. He questions anyone who looks suspicious. Leary still gets inside. A large donation has placed his name on the guest list and gives him a seat across from the president. Frank shares a photo of Leary with staff, but the disguise is too effective to match. At the same time, the White House receives reports that Frank was rude to hotel employees. Security footage supports the complaint. As a result, he is removed from duty for the next night's event. Lily is uneasy but cannot reverse the decision. The next morning, an agent drives Frank to the airport. Before leaving, the agent gives him a contact number to call after landing. The unusual way the agent recites the number sparks an idea that helps break the code found in Leary's apartment. The string of letters turns out to be a set of numbers tied to a bank. Frank goes to the bank and questions the staff. He learns that an employee who once handled an important client died under suspicious circumstances. Frank suspects a link to Leary and asks for the names of clients the employee served. Meanwhile, Leary prepares for the evening event. He hides the parts of his homemade weapon in his clothing and conceals the bullet inside a keychain, allowing him to pass the security check. The president arrives to loud cheers from supporters. Inside, Leary calmly reassembles his weapon beneath the table, a skill he has practiced blindfolded. Frank uncovers Leary's disguised identity through the list of bank accounts once managed by the murdered employee. He races to the venue, but time is short. The president is about to greet Leary for his donation. In those 10 seconds, Frank reaches Leary's table and blocks the shot, taking the bullet himself. Security rushes the president to safety. Failing in his plan, Leary grabs Frank as a human shield and retreats to the upper floor while forces surround the area. Frank's vest absorbs the impact, leaving him only slightly injured. Lily tries to guide the snipers, but lights near the elevator, damaged by Leary, make a clear shot difficult. Realizing the plot has collapsed, Leary decides life no longer matters. He threatens to kill Frank first. Frank quietly sends a coded message to Lily through his radio to reveal Leary's position. The first sniper shot misses, but it creates an opening.
Sleep well, my friend.
Frank fights back.
Take my hand.
In the final moment, he reaches out a hand, offering to save Leary, but Leary chooses to end his own life. The crisis ends. Frank is praised for saving the president. Reporters surround him and White House officials try to act friendly, but he rejects them and decides to retire from the CIA. Afterward, Frank and Lily grow closer. Yet when they plan to spend time together, Frank receives a final note from Leary, a farewell that leaves him wondering whether the fight is truly over or only part of Leary's last move. So the moral of the story is trust no one who sounds like a podcast host with a gun collection.